learn these things. It's not just the microphone as a universal kind of characteristics that makes it work that way. But so what if we have nearly or not quite defined objects and environments with which we don't quite know how to interact, but will still start to move in relationships? So what happens if we start to develop environments,
at least he knows Gibson, what his
objects and things that are not quite intelligible, that are not quite formed, but that are in formation. So now, see, we've done the leap from information to information, from things that are already formed to things that are always information, or even a formation that are never quite formed, that are never quite sedimenting into a given form. Okay. So this would be the structure of the 5 years project. Well, the first year we would just bring together certain, well, apart from this more scientific part of the research, we bring together systems for motion analysis and so on in a very critical manner, as I said before. In the second year, we would start investigating these movement relationships with digital amorphous environments, not only visual, but of course sound and even other kinds of physics. In the third year, we would start transposing these to physical kinds of architectures, wearable architectures, modular architectures. In the fourth year, we would start integrating these modules into a larger architectural structure, and this would eventually become a self-contained mobile structure for outer spaces that would tour different cities. The last year, what this structure would contain, this is the interesting question, of course, would be, well, spaces that would transform permanently in the relation with the bodies that are moving in these spaces. They will be transforming not only in their digital aspects of projections and sounds, but also even in the physical structure. We would bring in elements of experimental architecture of different kinds. And so this would be one part of this mobile laboratory, a laboratory of embodiment, how to produce accounts of space, of non-linear time space. This would be another long story, how the linear time space is related to certain kinds of perception also. But it would also be a way of a laboratory, an observatory, a mobile observatory of the kinds of standardized corporealities that information society is disseminating everywhere, through the ways in which people are more and more reproducing the movements of people talking in the movies, or in television, or in video games, and so on and so forth, or the movements disseminated through the choreographies of commercial music videos, or through systems like Dance Central, which I'm sure some of you know, this sophisticated video game in which you enter a competition in which you win if you are able to replicate best the movements done by an avatar who is reproducing a commercial music choreography, reduced to positions of movement, recognized through a system called Kinect, which for me is a radical way of militarizing our affects in the level of communication, leisure, and so on and so forth. So I think we have very highly problematic issues in terms of how bodies and affects are choreographed permanently in information society. And so the question of how to dechoreograph them is an important one that we can potentially answer from fields like dance and technology, telematic performance, and so on and so forth, where we provide other kinds of presence and other kinds of embodied reality. Okay, so I think I'm well over time.
No, it's
and maybe tomorrow I will have the opportunity to show other videos of other things and so on. But otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaime.
Would you like to take some questions?
Oh, if we have the time, of course,
Yeah.
but I don't know how much.
If people would like, or we have time. And
I mean,
this is an open structure until 8, and then we're connecting to this other group. But don't feel that you have to stay till the 8 o'clock is for me, for us to wrap up and connect to the other side. So I realize not everyone is committed to all of the time, but before we let Jaime go, also tomorrow, if you're interested in the schedule at 12 o'clock, there's going to be time to share. Some of the artists and participants will be sharing videos. And we have another artist coming, Renee Rose, who's going to be doing a demonstration project as well. So maybe just a question or two, if anyone has anything to ask.
I went very quickly over very dense things, so I can
Yeah.
go deep into them. Please.
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciated the really we take for granted these interfaces. We take for granted how we engage with these technologies, and you realize now that I've been working in this lab and working with cameras so much and computers, you realize that so much of how it is set up, technology itself, really impacts how you as a body, as a mover, engage with it. So I think it's really very interesting to try and dismantle that or break that apart, or at least keep those questions coming into how we are using our technology. So I want to really appreciate that.
Yeah, just one question that I guess speaks to art in general about its exclusivity, especially with this type of high-tech art. How are we going to affect people in their daily lives and change their perspectives?
Well,
How
look,
do we do that?
Descartes has affected us. We are living in a Cartesian society. So the whole technological paradigms in which we are based, I'm not going to say that we're totally invented by a philosopher. There's more people involved in this process. But still, he had a huge impact on what we are experiencing today. So, this is a very long-term process. We are sitting here, for me this is a hugely important issue, even in political terms, although I would call it a politics of laboratory in a way. So we are producing here new paradigms for hugely important questions. We don't know how or when this will, but I don't never think of these issues in terms of them becoming popularized, because I think the problem that we live in is that we live in a populistic kind of universalistic framework of culture, which is what I think is problematic itself. So I think what we need is a new kind of molecular, if you want to speak in Deleuzian terms, kind of disseminations of things that are always diversifying in such a way that you never get a general paradigm that is valid for everybody, which would be always a mistake, a problem. So, how do we generate a critical culture of technology that makes that what I'm giving you or telling you now doesn't become something that you replicate, but this just gives you or impinges upon you in such a way that you produce something radically different. But still we are connected in some strange way. And then someone sees what you're doing and they produce again something that you would never have thought. So this is the kind of paradigm that I think would be important. And there the issue of movement again becomes crucial. So for me, choreography is a very important paradigm to understand how bodies and knowledges and thinkings and affects are choreographed all the time. Because since I think reality is always in motion, motion can never be fully stopped, but it can be choreographed. This is the important and interesting issue. So power can never fully operate through fixing motion, because motion never stops, as far as I think. But it can be... We're never going to be still.
We're not rotating on the earth, and we're shifting.
And even at molecular levels, because movement is happening at all sorts of scales. Yeah. But then what can be done is to choreograph movement so that we start aligning ourselves into pre-given choreographies that seem at a certain point unavoidable. And there we have a problem, of course. So how can we start shifting from these choreographies in ways that are perhaps we need to add new registers to our political kinds of strategies. I think we have been very active for decades now on confrontational strategies that make visible things that were not visible, and so on and so forth. I think this is still important, and I do it as well. But how about starting to set to motion things that are never quite visible, but are intensely moving? But they are escaping the regimes of control, of representation, of simulation, of visualization, and so on and so forth. What happens if we start undoing certain choreographies in such a way that something not quite legible starts to happen, and suddenly the time-space linearity starts to shift in a way that you can't quite identify, but something is going on. This is the kind of thing that time impresses.
The imposition exercise of blocking, where you're just in a room, and then you start, the group starts collecting and following, and then all of a sudden you're just kind of trajectory, and it starts to shift inside of the building, and you're just something else. So it's not done by someone or something, it's just capturing the motion of
Yeah, flocking I think is an interesting thing, but not in order to simulate birds, but to reinvent motion, the human motion, to produce a post-human kind of motion in the human motion. Yeah, that's interesting.
All right. Any final thoughts? Great.
Thank you.
We're continuing on. You can stay or go, whatever you want to do. We're going to be coming back to Irvine to wrap up with them and just kind of talk through. But thank you for coming. If you're interested in tomorrow.
Feel free to grab some food on your way out.
So much fun to see this.